Polo was here at the town of Gulfstream in the early 20s. There were 3 good fields there and stabling for about 300 horses. In about 1965, that Gulfstream operation slowed down, and it moved up here to what became Gulfstream Polo Club right here in Lake Worth. And that lasted until about 3 years ago, but they were stabling there for about 300 horses, 7 fields. In about 1978, we had Palm Beach Polo and Country Club open up. Again, we had stabling there for almost 1,000 horses with upwards to 25 fields. And when you think about fields, it's 10 acres per field. So it's a major commitment. At that point in time, we also had Royal Palm Polo playing. And that brought the level of polo to a higher level, a faster game, more horses, more players, and more players from around the world.
Right. And then when polo came into Palm Beach County, it was basically because Bill Elvisacker decided that he would build a polo field. So it was kind of like build it and they will come type of thing. So I think when it came into Wellington, it was more like that old joke about buying swampland in Florida. And so he had this vision of bringing polo here. Maybe you'd want to tell him a little more about Bill bringing polo to Wellington.
I think the concept that Bill had was to have a major sporting place. So we had polo, tennis, swimming, croquet, and then eventually hunter jumping, shoujo. So there was a show barn built there. And the shows were actually in front of the stadium in what was then a parking lot. Yeah. That's how it started here.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize when they come into the museum and they look at how prevalent polo is in this area, a lot of Wellingtonians don't realize that Wellington grew up around polo, not the other way around. So basically the polo fields were here and Wellington grew up around the polo club. So there are people now who have resisted some of the development that goes on around the development of the equestrian community, when really they have the equestrian community to thank for polo even, or for Wellington even existing in the area. So I've always found that kind of an interesting topic, and people are always kind of caught off guard when they hear that. But the equestrian community really drove the development of building in Wellington and the western communities. This area is considered the winter high gold polo capital of the world. You get the best players in the world coming in here. You get a who's who of people internationally. You get patrons who are the owners of the team. So you get polo players, patrons, fans. People come in from January to April, and we are the absolute quintessential equestrian capital of the world at that time, from January to April. And we also have low and medium gold polo going on. So we have polo in the spring, we have polo in the fall. The only time we don't have a lot going on is in the summer, when it's being played throughout the rest of the country. But the highest level of polo is played here in Wellington, during those winter months. So it's really a unique venue, to have the polo here in our area, and to have the museum as well. People don't realize this museum is the only museum in the world dedicated to the sport of polo. So we preserve the history and tradition of the sport. So we're kind of a unique jewel, a resource for the community, because we're the only one that serves that function to preserve that great history and tradition of the sport. So
we work with all of the clubs. So there's about 275 clubs throughout the United States, and we work with all of those clubs. We work on programs, and I always joke about one of the things that a museum does is to preserve yesterday for tomorrow, so that we look back and research and do that type of thing. So we really represent polo in the United States, thus the National Museum of Polo and Hall of Fame. Yes, the concept started in 1978. 4 gentlemen were having lunch, and they decided that there should be a place, a permanent home for polo somewhere in the United States. By 1982, 83, they had filed and they had their 501c3, which allowed them to start to raise money. By 1986, we did, with a company that I was with at the time, Palm Beach Design, Palm Beach Directions, we did the first fundraising event for the museum at Palm Beach Polo in 1986. That was the first fundraising. Then the museum did an exhibit at the Kentucky Horse Park from 1988, 90, and 91. And then we kind of packed it up and looked for a permanent location. We looked throughout the United States, and Florida was the place to be. At the time we did a survey, and the amount of polo that was played here in South Florida equaled the rest of the United States. The rest is history. We raised money. We bought the Philip Eichelhardt, the first chairman and one of the founders of the museum, gave 3 acres of land to the museum. We bought the other 7 from the family, and thus we have 10 acres with a permanent location, which opened in 1997.
When people come to the museum, they can learn about the history of the sport. So we have a lot of exhibits that cover the history. So we have some of the ancient history. We have push and play exhibits. One of them covers the decades of polo history in the United States. And it's broken down by decades. So for instance, you don't have to watch the whole thing to see if you want to see just things that happened in the so-called golden age of polo, which was in the 1930s, or what happened in the 70s and 80s when polo was being developed here. We touch on exhibits on women's polo, junior polo, arena polo, just various aspects that all the people who play the sport. So it's low goal polo, high goal polo. We don't just focus on high goal polo, which is what we're known for in the area, but we represent everybody in the United States.
We also house the major trophies for the sport. Okay. Thus, over our shoulder, you see the United States Open Championship, which is kind of the Super Bowl of polo. And so we have that type of thing. We have the Westchester Cup, which was 1886, the first match played between the United States and England. So that's a little bit, if somebody wants to spend some time, they could be here for 3 hours, 3 days. In 1985, Prince Charles and Di came for the first time, and they were at Palm Beach Polo and Country Club. I think more people came to see her than came to see him play, but that's what happened. He returned in 1988 to play again, but she didn't come that time. And then he came back one more time to play in Vero Beach. So yes, he was here. He did stable across the street from here at a place that was called Sun South. That was Jory Butler Kent, their place. His horses were there. Major Ferguson was here, tried the horses, played the horses. And then, of course, we had
Maharaja.
We had the Maharaja of Jaipur here. Quite a few of the celebrities played. We had a celebrity tournament for a while, raising money, Piaget against Cartier. So we've had quite a few of the major. Tommy Lee Jones was here recently and back again. So we've had quite a few people here, and I think
it's been a pretty regular fixture. And then you have. Back in the 80s, you did those celebrity tournaments that had, Alex Cord and Doug Sheehan and Bill Devane, Pamela Sue Martin, and then all the celebrities used to come to Palm Beach Polo, and they got all the celebs out there at.
I think one of the major draws to Palm Beach Polo, and to Bill Obasaka's credit, within about a half hour from the time you arrived at the Palm Beach International Airport, you could be on Worth Avenue, or you could be out at polo. Take your choice. And once you got to polo, you had tennis, you had croquet, you had golf, swimming. So I think it was a kind of a turnkey operation, and that's what I think made the success of it. Well, I don't think anybody recognizes the fact that Palm Beach County, in and of itself, gets in excess of 25,000 horses per season. We have all venues here. We have dressage, hunter jumper. We have a trotting track on 441. We have a full-size racetrack, which is right here on Lyons Road. We have all venues, including polo. We just had the World Championships. The Federation of International Polo was just played here a few weeks ago. And there were 8 teams from different countries, different divisions that qualified. To do that, it required 180 horses. So just to give you an idea of what that takes, and this is off-season for us. This is leading into the season. So in the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've had the International Polo that played the Federation of International Polo. We've had the International Cup, Switzerland playing against the USA, not USPA. And then we've had the National 20 Gold and the North American Cup. That was just within the last...
Played at Grand Champions
Played
Polo
at Grand
Club,
Champions
so.
Polo Club.
Yeah.
This is off-season, and we've just had this happen in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, the economic impact on horses in the community is just tremendous.
To give you an idea, they said that when the Federation of International Polo came, that they had tied up or held 1,000 rooms for all of the staff that came with them and the teams here in Palm Beach County. Obviously, that's a bed tax, so it's a driving factor. In 1990, the Hall of Fame started. It was a way to recognize players for outstanding performance and outstanding dedication to the sport. Since then, we've increased it to have the lifetime dedication to the sport, because there were
Lifetime contributions to the sport.
There were people in regions that really never played nationally that did a lot for that sport in a particular region, whether they trained horses, bred horses, taught players, maintained their own clubs. So that was another division. And then Brenda decided that the main factor, our horses.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the important thing to remember is inducting into the Hall of Fame, we have the Standard Hall of Fame, which is more to recognize players. We have the Iglehart Awards, which is to recognize outstanding lifetime contributions to the sport of polo. And in 2000, we started inducting horses as well. And it was largely based, what George is trying to give me credit is I feel like I'm the voice of the horses because they can't speak for themselves. So I did quite a bit of research, and everyone had agreed for quite some time that horses needed to be recognized, but no one had been able to put together all the stories to be able to know how to pick the candidates. So in 2000, we started inducting horses of the sport. So we're very proud that we not only recognize the humans, but we recognize our equine partners as well.
And Brenda divided that into 2 segments. One before a certain award that was for the best playing pony in the United States Open. And so those horses were kind of forgotten, the ones from the golden era. They were just, nobody really remembered them. And Brenda did all this research. And we stayed late nights, night after night after research, and finally she inducted some of the horses that were absolutely forgotten. One of my favorites, his name was Chicken.
Oh yeah, that was a mare. But yeah, so we've
played internationally, played in the Westchester Cup.
Yeah. Yeah, any player will tell you that a horse is 70 to 80% of the game. If you don't have a great horse, you can't get to the ball and you can't play like a 10-goal player. So the horses are a very important, part of the sport. And I have to admit, when people come in the museum, people who aren't polo people, most people want to know about the horses. So we have some really great exhibits that talk about the horse. We have a push and play exhibit that tells you a lot of the facts that I was able to find about the breeding data, the owners, additional photographs of the horses, which, the older horses from generations ago, a lot of those aren't familiar to people, so they really get a kick out of seeing that. And we also have portraits of each one of the horses that we induct, which is really, really nice. So we house those as well. In addition to the exhibits that we were talking about earlier, we also have some very important artwork that's included here. We have bronzes and paintings that are even significant outside the world of polo, and we're continuously striving to acquire more artifacts so that things aren't forgotten. So it's the mission of the museum to preserve that history and tradition, but that doesn't stop with what's already here. We have to continuously look for things that need to be brought here for preservation. Also, every day history is being made, so it's an ongoing job to chronicle what's happening today, because that's tomorrow's history. So there's quite a bit that goes on here on a daily basis that people don't realize. They think during off-season that nothing goes on here, but actually there's research and creation of new exhibits going on, updating the old exhibits. So it's a continuously evolving museum. And we've also been very lucky as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're dependent on the support of the polo community to keep this museum running, and there are other nonprofits in the area that are also very worthy. But what people need to understand is we have a brick and mortar building that has to be maintained and kept up, and there's a lot of love and expense that goes into that. So it's it's really a labor of love, doing what we do here. But I think it's really important, for the preservation of the artifacts of the sport.
Come visit us anytime. We spend part of every day preserving yesterday for tomorrow.